Marvel Rivals just dropped the terrifying new Man-Spider costume for Spider-Man. But what if I told you this monstrous look comes straight from some of the darkest transformations in Marvel Comics history? From grotesque mutations and body horror to cannibalistic Spider-Men across the multiverse. This design draws from decades of chilling Spider-Man moments. Stick around, because by the end, you'll see how Marvel turned some of Peter Parker's most disturbing nightmares into one of his coolest in-game costumes. So today, we're jumping into the Amazing Spider-Man issue 437. The comic Marvel Rivals cites as the very first appearance of the Man-Spider. But we'll explore several earlier and later moments that clearly inspired the costume and concept. And when you start to piece them together, it's clear the Man-Spider costume isn't just for show. It's a tribute to Spider-Man's darkest moments. So let's start with the Amazing Spider-Man issue 437. This issue doesn't waste time. It immediately drops us into the horror. We open in the sewers, where a monstrous humanoid spider creature is revealed to be none other than Peter Parker himself. His costume is torn apart, and his terrifying arachnid features burst through. Peter begins narrating the events leading up to this moment. At this point in his life, Peter Parker is overwhelmed, juggling exams, freelance work at the Daily Bugle, and his marriage to Mary Jane, while Aunt May and MJ constantly urge him to take some rest. Instead, he uses work as an excuse to slip out and patrol the city as Spider-Man. During his patrol, Spider-Man saves a young man from being mugged, and that man turns out to be Sync from Generation X, a mutant who can temporarily copy the powers of other mutants. It's a routine save for Spider-Man, but the situation quickly escalates. Watching from a distance is Plant Man, seeking revenge on Sync for a previous defeat at the hands of Generation X. Plant Man uses his spores to infect Sync, mutating him into a monstrous rampaging version of himself that terrorizes a nearby park. Spider-Man swings back in to intervene, but before he can stop Sync, massive plant tendrils burst from the ground, dragging the mutant below the surface. Spider-Man debates whether to chase after him or finally listen to Aunt May and go home. But of course, the hero dives into the sewers. That's when he's ambushed and ensnared by Plant Man's vines and branches. Panicking, Peter thrashes, feeling the tendrils close in as he's overwhelmed and infected by the same mutagenic spores. This is what triggers Spider-Man's horrifying transformation into the Man-Spider. Meanwhile, a partially conscious Sync is held captive by Plant Man, who debates killing him or using him to get revenge on the rest of Generation X. But before Plant Man can decide, the newly transformed Man-Spider emerges from the shadows, demanding the antidote. Despite his monstrous new form, Peter still clings to his humanity, struggling to stay calm and hide the agony he's in. He narrates, "My left eye, or left eyes, feel like they're being punctured by 1,000 searing daggers. The talons that have replaced my hands burn with unmentionable agony, and modesty prevents me from describing the other gross and humiliating changes hidden by my costume." You can really feel Peter's desperation here. He's not just fighting to survive, he's fighting to stay human. Plant Man summons plant creatures to fight Man-Spider. They regenerate endlessly. Perfect soldiers made of vines and bark that feel no pain or fear. Spider-Man fights back, but his new monstrous form makes the battle chaotic and brutal. Then, Sync joins the fight, his mutant abilities allowing him to duplicate Spider-Man's powers due to their shared infection. An unexpected move, as Sync isn't usually able to copy the powers from people who are not mutants, even developing his own Spidey sense. And together, the two manage to corner Plant Man. Man-Spider bluffs, threatening him for the antidote. But when Plant Man calls his bluff, Peter forces Plant Man to also be infected with the same spores, forcing him to hand over the cure. Once they take it, both Sync and Spider-Man revert to normal, though Peter is visibly shaken by what just happened. While The Amazing Spider-Man 437 is the main comic that directly ties to the Man-Spider costume in Marvel Rivals, it's far from the only time Peter Parker has endured monstrous spider transformations. To fully understand where this design comes from, it's worth briefly touching on a few earlier and later storylines, moments that serve as clear influences and honourable mentions in shaping the eerie concept of Man-Spider across Marvel history. Back in The Amazing Spider-Man issues 100 to 102, Peter Parker went through something very similar in the classic Six-Arms Saga. Feeling crushed by guilt and his double life, Peter creates a formula to remove his Spider-Man powers for good. believing it will help him to live a normal life with Gwen Stacy. He drinks it, but instead of losing his powers, he wakes up with 4 extra arms. This grotesque transformation throws his life into chaos and drives him into hiding. During this storyline, Spider-Man battles Morbius the living vampire, with help from the Lizard. In an ironic twist, Morbius's blood becomes the key to curing Peter, removing the extra limbs but allowing him to retain his powers. This early horror-themed arc clearly influenced the later Man-Spider design. Extra limbs, monstrous features, and Peter's inner fear of losing his humanity. Years later, Marvel revisited the spider-mutation concept in Spectacular Spider-Man issues 15 to 20. This time, the threat came from Adriana Soria, the Spider Queen, a powerful mutant whose saliva contained a mutagenic enzyme that gave spider powers to others, connecting them to the mystical web of life and destiny. After a confrontation with the Spider Queen involving Captain America and Spider-Man, Adriana kisses Peter, and that moment changes everything. Soon, Peter begins mutating again. Extra eyes form on his face, coarse spider hairs grow along his body, and his physiology starts to warp. By issue 18, Peter is nearly unrecognizable, a true human spider hybrid that looks strikingly similar to the Marvel Rivals costume. The artwork during this sequence sells the horror perfectly. Every panel makes Peter look a little less like a hero and a little more like a nightmare. Eventually, Peter Parker is once again defeated and trapped underground. Peter's mutation completes, turning him into a massive, horrifying spider creature. The Spider Queen calls him beautiful, but the sight is nightmare fuel. Peter later molts, emerging human again. Finally, another clear inspiration for the Man-Spider design comes from Edge of Spider-Verse issue 4. In this dark story, the Spider-Man of another universe isn't Peter Parker, it's Patton Parnell, a disturbed cannibalistic version of Spider-Man. After gaining his powers, Parnell embraces his spider instincts in the worst way possible, feeding on small animals, including a cat. When his uncle Ted discovers his horrifying cocooned victims, Patton attacks, chillingly saying, "With great power comes a great appetite." He continues to mutate into a monstrous spider-human hybrid with multiple limbs and eyes, trapping his love interest Sarah Jane in his web before being killed by Morlan, one of the inheritors. And there you have it. Not only the comic book origins of the Man-Spider costume in Marvel Rivals, but also the terrifying history that inspired it, from the Six-Arms Saga to the Spider Queen's curse, and even across the multiverse with Patton Parnell. Each transformation shows Spider-Man facing his worst fear, losing control of the monster within. So what do you think? Is the Man-Spider costume one of Spider-Man's creepiest or coolest designs yet? Let me know down in the comments if you tried it out on Marvel Rivals, and what other comic-inspired suits do you want to see next? And if you're still craving more Marvel Rivals content, then make sure to check out my Marvel Rival playlists, or check out the rest of my channel where I upload content just like this every single week. But for the meantime, peace, peace, peace.